On the final scene of End of Evangelion. First, I would like to say, before I get talking about this scene's meaning, I would like to clear up a question that I've seen quite a bit. The reason that Shinji and Asuka are the only ones on the beach is because they are the first, and at the time of the scene, only people who have rejected instrumentality. Shinji, because he was the one we saw rejected during the film, and Asuka, because we know she has the strongest sense of self of the entire cast of Evangelion, not wanting to rely on others and instead only on herself. Secondly, I would like to say that I don't feel either version of Evangelion's ending is fully complete without the other. I feel that they work in tandem with each other to get across the core themes of the show. Though I would say that the themes aside, End of Evangelion is a much more complete ending plot-wise. However, it was the themes of Evangelion that impacted me the most. That is not to say that the plot is not good. Quite the contrary. In fact, I love it. However, the themes were, at least for me, what solidified the show as a masterpiece in my mind. That is why I tend to feel that these endings work well if you take them on their own, but work even better when you have them both to complement each other. Lastly, before I get into my take on End of Ava's final scene and its relation to the end of the show, I would like to mention a few details about the production of those last two episodes. It has been stated that the last episode being so unconventional was because of time constraints, which were caused by many different factors. As I said before, the last two episodes plot-wise left the series feeling incomplete. However, thematically they wrapped up the show beautifully in my opinion. It is clear from several shots during those episodes that End of Ava was the intended ending, at least to some degree, regarding the plot at least. The shots that I am referring to in particular are the shot of Ritsuko floating in LCL, the shot of Asuka curled up in her entry plug, and the shot of a dead or wounded Masato. So we know to some extent End of Ava was the planned ending. This makes me wonder, if they had not had those time constraints, would the last two episodes be just like End of Ava, or at least quite similar? Or would they, theme-wise, be more akin to the last two episodes that we ended up getting, but with the plot of End of Ava mixed in? As I am sure you know if you have watched the show, they each take the ideas and themes from the show in very different directions, with End of Ava presenting the themes of the show in a much darker manner than the end of the show did. With all that being said, I love both endings and I am very glad that we got both. Now, on to the meaning of the final scene. I know that there are a lot of interpretations of this scene out there, and this is not saying that those other explanations are wrong, but I think the reason why the scene of Shinji choking Asuka is there is to show that even though Shinji made the choice to reject instrumentality, he still falls back into his self-destructive tendencies, choking Asuka out of anger and sadness because of the many times she has rejected and ridiculed him over the course of not just End of Ava, but the entirety of the series. Asuka then touches his cheek, offering Shinji genuine human connection. This finally gives Shinji what he has needed and sought for so long. This causes him to break down, as everyone who has watched the show can attest. Shinji has done some pretty horrible things to Asuka over the course of the movie. But now, here she is, offering Shinji human contact purely for the fact that she knows that this is what Shinji needs. Asuka answers, "How disgusting," which in my eyes is her assessment of Shinji as a human being after seeing his true self during instrumentality. I have heard that this line was Asuka's VA's response when Ano asked her what she thought Asuka's response would be when she learned about what happened during the hospital scene at the beginning of the movie, which makes sense in context, especially because I think everyone who has watched the movie had a similar reaction during that scene. I feel that this scene has many parallels to the final scene of the show. If we examine these two scenes, we see that one takes place in reality and the other in Shinji's mind. The congratulations scene is a happy one. Shinji made the choice to reject instrumentality and accept himself, and he was congratulated for that choice, while the movie ends with the same choice being made by Shinji. This time, however, there was no one there to congratulate him, and instead only returned to a world filled with pain and misunderstanding. And Asuka, the source of much of his pain, is lying there next to him. I feel that this reinforces one of the core themes in the show. To find happiness, you need two things. You need to love yourself, and you need to make meaningful human connections. Shinji can, for a time, create a false happiness for himself. However, in time, that illusion will come crashing down, or tumbling down if you prefer. That is to say, the end of the TV show represents Shinji making the decision to love himself. However, this is not all one needs for happiness, and so we get End of Eva, which shows us the other piece that Shinji needed for true happiness is positive human interaction. This next part might seem like a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. For just a moment, we look at NGE as Ano finally accepting himself just like Shinji does. Even though this was the case, he received backlash from his fans for the show's ending, and so he made End of Eva. This film was received much more positively than the end of the show, thus giving Ano the positive response that he needed, leading to, for at least a time, him having a healthier mental state. Now, this last bit does not have any basis in anything, but it was something that I felt had interesting parallels to the show. One final thing before I wrap this up. I know that a lot of people view End of Eva as a middle finger to the audience, but I don't see it that way. I feel that this is Ano's way of showing the audience that while making connections with others can be difficult, the alternative is to end up like Shinji, and as we have seen, Shinji does some truly awful things. Because of this, I feel that End of Eva functions more as a warning to fans rather than an outright middle finger. But even with all of this, it is still hopeful, showing the audience that no matter what, you still have the opportunity to change.